Hello, Tar Heel Nation. I'm back. This is Dan DeWitt, your host of UNC Hoops Talk podcast. I am glad that you are well enough to join me and listen to this podcast. It's a great day to be a Tar Heel. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. Just really stinks right now with what we've gone through. I do have to say, we have to be extremely proud of everything that the guys did this season. The season as a whole was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to cover it as a podcast here. It was a lot of fun to watch as a fan. And to go through it with you guys that were listening, that you were communicating, talking with me. And it was a lot of fun. Did not end the way we wanted to. Heartbreak City, man. It doesn't get any rougher than that. That's a rough way to go out. It's probably better to be blown out, lose easily, lose by 10, whatever, than it is to lose on a buzzer beater like that. We will, of course, jump into the game. What could have gone differently? Could have gone better for us? What could we have done differently and better to possibly win that game? What other factors came into it? We'll hit that as well. I will try to stay as upbeat as I can. Man, like I told you in the last podcast, it may take me a couple days if we lose, and it definitely has. People around town. I live in Tennessee. I don't even live in North Carolina, but everybody knows how hard it was. When they lost, my phone was blowing up with a bunch of people that I did not respond to, but through the last couple of days, people just coming up and, hey, you doing okay? That was a rough one. Great game. All that stuff. We'll talk about the game. I'll briefly hit on off-season stuff here, but just shortly because I think I'll do another one later this month or next week or something that we'll talk more about what our underclassmen should do, schedule the podcast, look at some off-season stuff. So we'll hit that later, but first, like I said, we're going to jump into the game. Like I said before, so glad that you have joined in the conversation that is UNC Hoops and are listening to this podcast. I'd love for you to join the conversation even more, give feedback, questions, comments, even join in, come on the podcast with me. Connect with me somewhere, and the links for all of my social networks or whatever is in the description below. Email works great. Anything like that. Just hope you will connect and give feedback. Also share the podcast. It helps a lot. I would love for a lot of new Tar Heels to come on board and join in the conversation here that we have at UNC Hoops Talk and get ready for the next season and beyond with us. But first, we'll take care of business, as unpleasant as it may be, of talking about the national championship game. I really thought we had it. Obviously, I was nervous. Villanova had been playing so well. They'd, killed Oklahoma. But I really thought we had. I thought, we could pound it inside. We'd take care of business and go home with the national championship. Did not work out that way. Started off not so bad. First half, it's a tight one. We ended up with a 5-point lead. Should have really been more. We had a 7-point lead, and under 30 seconds or whatever, we get a kind of a breakout. Justin Jackson goes up for reverse layups, gets hammered, and they get the ball back. It's not called, of course. It goes back the other way, and they hit a shot at the buzzer. So instead of it going from like 7-9, goes back 7-5. Big 4-point swing there. It was a big one. There was a lot of swings. There was a lot of bad calls. And before I even talk about the refs, I do want to say you have to congratulate Villanova. They played a really good game, some tough defense. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Shot the ball really well, as they had been throughout the tournament and into the Final Four. We know how well they shot against Oklahoma. They hit some really difficult shots. We played some good defense. They just hit some shots with hands in their faces, with guys in their face. Really contested shots. They knocked down some really tough ones. So you have to commend them for that. It wasn't like I would say they necessarily stole one from us. They played really well as along with us, which was what made it such a good game. So you have to give Villanova credit, is what I want to say. But some of those calls were just ridiculous. And the foul call or the foul count was 20-16 at the end of the game. So it wasn't like all the fouls were being called against us, but we did have a stretch in the first half where it was like 7 or 8 fouls in a row called on us without them. I mean, we had one possession, I think, with 3 fouls. Like we were on defense for a minute and a half because they called some cheap fouls, and they were cheap. They were ticky tack. Like they would drive, we'd bump a little bit, foul, foul, foul. And I'm okay with that if you do it both ways. Call the game however you want. Players adjust, but it's got to be equal. And that's what really irritated me. Like, I even talked to someone, not really even a basketball fan, like let alone a Carolina fan. There's no bias there. They don't watch a lot of basketball, but they watch the game, and they could tell how much the calls were against North Carolina compared to Villanova. And again, it's not the amount of calls, it's just the ticky-tack stuff compared to what it takes to get a foul on the other end. So yeah, they would be sitting there playing defense that Archie Diacono, when he came as a freshman, I loved him. I loved his game. He was phenomenal even as a freshman. But what they were allowed to get away with on the defensive end compared to what we were was just not fair. I'll put it that way. They're sitting there playing defense on our guards, and they're hitting. And you're going to hit arm. You're going to hit somebody. You're not going to get all ball every time you're swatting at the ball when you're constantly doing that. But they never got called for it. And it hurt us. A lot of people have said we didn't pound the ball inside enough. We didn't get it to Bryce. We didn't get to Isaiah, to Kennedy enough. Like, that's where we should have had the advantage, or where we did have the advantage. We just didn't take advantage of it. I agree, but part of that is because of the way they were allowed to play defense on us. They were allowed to, swat. It's a lot harder to feed the post when you got a guy right up in your face, and commend them for getting up in our face. And they did what the refs allowed them to do. But I don't think it should have been allowed unless they were going to allow us to get away with a little bit more on the other end, which they didn't. So, the way they're clawing and hitting and whatever, we couldn't make a good pass inside. It's too tough. And then when we did, they stole it, or we're not out of bounds, or just wasn't in good position. It wasn't into the post, really. Our guy had to face up. Some of that is our fault. Like, if a guy's up in your face, you got to take it to him. Go right at him, be strong with the ball. But again, if the ref's not calling anything, you're going to shy away from that because you're going to get a turnover, and they're going to go the other way with the ball. Your refs or your coach is going to be ticked at you, and there's nothing you can do about it. So eventually, when you're not getting those calls, you're going to shy away from being aggressive. Again, that's the ref's fault. I don't want to blame our loss on the ref. I just think it wasn't fair the way they were allowed to play defense compared to the way we were allowed to play defense. And I've seen some haters, whatever you want to call them, mostly Duke fans say, the foul count isn't that different. You had 20, they had 16. They had their best player, talking about Chris Jenkins, in foul trouble in the first half, whatever. He's not a guard out there playing. I'm not saying they called the inside play differently or, whatever, compared, our offense to their offense. So sure, he got called for a couple of fouls, but the way they were allowed to play on the perimeter compared to the way we were allowed to, like, they would drive, we'd hand check, we'd bump, it's a foul. Okay, I'm okay with that, call it a foul. But then when they're slapping our arms, they're reaching in, grabbing us, bumping us, you got to call the same thing. That's all I'm asking. Again, I'm not blaming our loss on the refs, but it definitely had an impact. Again, we should have been tougher. We should have taken care of business. And we could have, when we only lose by 3 like this, and it's at the buzzer. There's things that we could have done differently to shore up a win here. Obviously, getting behind, and there was that stretch in the second half where we were frustrated, and you just can't let that happen. But it does happen, and that's why we have to kind of live with it, and why it's so tough as well. It's not easy, but yeah, that's my 2 cents about the refs. There was some traveling calls. I posted on Vine one where the guy traveled. Instead, Isaiah got called for a foul. I didn't really think there was even a foul, especially, again, compared to what they were allowed to, the way they were allowed to bump us, compared to the way we were allowed to bump them. I don't think there should have been a foul called, but he flat out traveled twice. He slid when he tried to stop. That's a travel. and then he pivoted, switched his pivot foot before he jumped, and that's a travel. So, whatever. And that was with that was like 35 seconds left in the game. They were up one. He hit 2 free throws to go up 3 instead of, obviously, us getting the ball back on the travel call. Just down 1, could have taken the lead with under 30 seconds left. But again, there's other things that we didn't do well that we could have to take care of it. Looking at some of the stats.
Stats are always for losers.
Nobody really cares about stats when you lose a game like this. It just doesn't come down to it. But Marcus Page led us 21 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists to 1 turnover, hit 4 threes. Joel Berry, 20 points, 15 of those in the first half. He was phenomenal in the first half. Ended up with 4 assists, 4 for 4 from the three-point line. Yeah, like I said, just in the first half, 15 points just really carried us. And if you saw after the game, the welcome home, he was in a boot, he was on crutches. Somewhere he got hurt. I don't know if that's what the difference was from first half to second half. I can't really say it is because he's, the articles that I read said he didn't even know he was hurt until the next morning. He woke up with a sore foot, so you can't really say that's what slowed him down or anything like that. But Bryce Johnson, 14 points, 8 rebounds. Definitely not his typical game. He got, those are decent stats. But again, it was not the way he usually scores. He wasn't allowed to dominate. And I talked about feeding the post, and we weren't allowed to because the way their guards were allowed to guard us. It's true. But also our spacing the whole night was just kind of off. We did not have good spacing. We were way too bunched up, and it's a lot harder to feed the post when you're so bunched up, because their help defense is right there, and you just can't feed the post as well. So again, that's something we could have fixed, done a better job at, and changed the outcome of this game. But Bryce wasn't allowed to. Isaiah Hicks, 4 points, 4 rebounds, and that's in 20 minutes. That's not a typical Isaiah Hicks game. Kennedy Meeks, 4 points, 7 rebounds. Again, he's got to score more than that in 21 minutes. He was 1 for 8 shooting, and you just can't have it. And sure, he was 1 for 8. We got some of those rebounds back, but if you can't score the rebound either, it just doesn't do any good. Justin Jackson, 9 points on 3-pointers, all in the first half. It looked like he was going to have a really good game in front of his home crowd, hitting those threes, but just couldn't do anything in the second half. Missed a couple of big free throws for us in the second half. Kind of a rough outing for him. And again, nobody's horrible. I mean, 9 points from Justin. A lot of, if other guys are, with Marcus and Joel both with 20 points, we'd say it's probably okay. Everybody kind of had a good or okay game, but it just, nobody really got us over the hump, and nobody had their kind of normal game. Bryce is obviously usually better. Kennedy, Isaiah, Marcus had 7 points in the last 90 seconds. Otherwise, he's down at 14 points. Joel Berry, 15 of those 20 in the first half. So it's just kind of a weird game, team stat wise. Well, and Theo didn't even shoot. Ended up with 3 assists. For Theo not even take a shot, that's pretty crazy, I would say. Nate Britt did not shoot well, 1 for 4, gave us 2 points. But yeah, like I said, just not a typical game for us. They had a guy come off the bench and score 20. He was their leading scorer. Phil Booth came out of nowhere, shot 6 for 7, 2 for 2 from 3, 6 for 6 from the free throw line, 20 points. Career night for him. And yeah, Jenkins, we actually kind of held 14 points. And yeah, obviously the buzzer beater there at the end added 3 to that. And their big guy, 9 points. Their point guard, 4 points, 0 assists. Hart, who had been going off for them Final Four, and I think even the Elite 8, just 12 points. Arch Dinakino, 16 points. So it wasn't like any, one guy killed us for them really either. It's just they shot so well, took advantage of stuff that we couldn't. As far as team stats go, we out-rebounded them 36-23. Offensive rebounds were 16-2. But again, we just weren't able to finish those second chance points. We beat them 11-2. So they had 2 offensive rebounds, got 2 points out of it. We had 16 offensive rebounds, only got 11 points out of it. We only had 11 turnovers, not crazy for us. But again, like I said in a previous game, some of them were just live ball ones. They could run out on it, just not good ones, just wrong time or just really dumb. I know we had one inbound threw it to Marcus in the corner and just went through his hands out of bounds. And there's a couple we just kind of threw away. Not pretty. They had 10 turnovers, so it wasn't like that was the difference there. They only had 6 assists. We had 16 assists, which is kind of crazy. They obviously did a lot of one-on-one stuff, or at least a lot more than us. Shooting wise, they shot 58% for the game, 57% from three, and 77% from the free throw line. We were 43% for the game, 65% from the 3-point line, and 69% from the free throw line. Like I mentioned Justin's before, we just had some badly timed missed free throws. We hit 11 threes. Obviously, Marcus's really late one. We hit another one out of the corner late to put us in. Again, you think we hit 11 threes. Like, I like our chances. Anytime we hit 11 threes, like, you think we're going to win. I mean, Justin was 3 for 4. Joel was 4 for 4. Marcus was 4 for 7. Like I said, Nate shot poorly, was 0 for 2. But you got to like our chances when we're 11 for 17 from the 3-point line. We just couldn't get it together. But kind of a really shocking one, points in the paint. They outscored us 32-26. Like, who outscored? I know we hadn't won a game where we outscored them, but I don't think we had even lost a game where we outscored the opponent in the points in the paint. I think the only one we lost was the first Duke game. We outscored them massively in the paint and ended up losing that game. But they scored 32 points in the paint, and we had 26 points off turnovers, 14-7 in our favor. Second chance points, I said 11-2 in our favor. There was absolutely zero fast break points in this game. Neither team scored a fast break point. Just crazy. Bench points, obviously Isaiah, we said, wasn't his normal self. Nate shot poorly, and Theo didn't even shoot. And they outscored us 22-6 from the bench. And yeah, there's no one thing that kind of points out besides, the way, again, I'll go back to the way they were allowed to play defense, and also our spacing on offense just wasn't good. Both teams played really good defense. It was when you step back from it, it was a really good game, really entertaining game. It's going to go down as one of the better, if not the best, national championship games. Obviously, of course, because of the way it ended, but even just the way it was played, it was a really good game. Two really good defensive teams. They hit some really tough shots. We hit some timely shots to get us back into it. But there just isn't anything that sticks out that, lost us the game. And maybe that's what hurts so much as well is what do you do about that? Like, you just got to tip your hat and I guess mourn for a little bit and then move on, I guess. I don't know, not easy to do. And you got to think these kids, 18 to 22 years old, toughest thing they've gone through in their life. I mean, just most heartbreaking thing. And then they have to answer questions from a bunch of grown men and women after the game for, who knows how long. I think they said Marcus sat in the locker room with people around him for like 13 minutes. And he was just so phenomenal at answering questions and thinking through the game and what he was feeling and stuff like that. And I just can't even imagine that. Like, think about the toughest situation you've been in, and then having people ask you questions about it. And sometimes completely strangers. Maybe they know, some of the beat writers, some of the local writers and stuff, but really some strangers just kind of asking questions about this toughest thing that you've just gone through. You don't get really time to process it. Just, I don't know. We have to tip our hats off to our guys. We have to give them credit. It's phenomenal what they did and the way they handled it. I mean, you think about Cam Newton, the way he handled the press conference after the Super Bowl. Probably more likely, most people are going to handle it that way than the way, our guys got up and talked about it and stuff. And definitely heartbreaking to listen to some of those interviews the next day. The next day I listened to a lot of them, watched a lot of them that I could see, and just breaks your heart. I don't know, phenomenal. But yeah, working through it. I'm allowed to go out in public now. No, I'm doing all right, but yeah, just so tough to do and tough to listen to, and probably the worst part about it is we're gonna have to see that shot every year, when college basketball starts, what they're going to talk about is the championship game and the way it ended. And I didn't even mention how it ended here. I assume and I know that you know how it ended. We come back from 10. Marcus hits that just crazy double clutch three from like NBA range to tie it up with 4.7 seconds left. And they go down, and Chris Jenkins just breaks our hearts, breaks our backs with that three. And I'll agree. A lot of people have been saying you got to guard the inbounder. Our guys were way too far back, like 4.7 seconds. It doesn't matter if they hit a three or a layup. Like, yeah, you can't have them have a layup because it's such a high percentage shot, but you can't let them get a wide open shot either. Like, you gotta get up and guard guys. Once you know they inbound the ball, it's not going long. Everybody's got to get a guy and just stick tight to him. And if you think who's going to take the shot, maybe help a little bit towards him, but you can't let a guy. I mean, he just stepped right into that three. It was a deep three, maybe NBA range, a little bit less. But he just stepped into it in rhythm and just knocked it down. And what's crazy is the whole game, like even, before the game, all the pre-talk was like, how are we going to handle Chris Jenkins? What are we going to do about Chris Jenkins? How are we going to match up with Chris Jenkins? And like all game, we did a pretty good job. Obviously, he was in some foul trouble, but like we handled him. Like it wasn't a big deal. And then we knew he could hit from outside. He had hit one already. The scouting report was that he's a big guy that could hit, stretch four. He can hit the three, and we just leave him wide open. Like you just can't do that. And I guess I don't know. I have to go back and watch it. I'm gonna watch. I watched the national broadcast during the game, and kind of ticked me off. They were talking about Villanova so much more than us. But anyway, I DVR'd the team stream where it's Brennan Hayward and West Durham and the North Carolina homers, if you will. And I want to go back and kind of watch the game again with that broadcast. But I don't know, everybody's saying Bryce is the one that's supposed to be on him, and I guess when I watch it back, I'll watch that closer. Isaiah is obviously one that challenges him, but if Isaiah was there kind of doubling Arch, like if he's doing that and he's not the one guarding Jenkins, then someone else is going to be open. So, and I did actually hear that Booth, the guy that went off for 20 off the bench, was wide open too. So I'm going to watch that as well the next time I watch this game, if I can make it through it. But I don't know, just can't let him be wide open and to step into it. And like he's been their best player in the tournament and knocking down big shots. Like you just can't give him that open of a look. Like I don't know, just it's gonna haunt guys. It's gonna haunt Roy. It's gonna haunt guys for quite some time, because we could have gone into overtime, and like Marcus said, and I believe it too. We go into overtime. We got the momentum. We're gonna win that game. But again, you can't dwell on that. You give them credit, and we got to move on. And I've definitely talked about this game longer than I have wanted to. So I guess that wraps up my recap of the national championship game. If I missed something, let me know. We'll hit it in the next one. My plan is to come back next week or sometime here in April yet, kind of close up and look at the offseason a little bit more, close up on the season completely. And I guess what I'll say in this one, as I'll hit on all this stuff more, is looking at the draft, because of the new rules that guys are allowed to declare for the draft 3 times. I think it was if you declared once, you could pull your name out. If you declared again, you had to stay in. Now they can declare like 3 times, still take their names out. Plus, guys can stay in longer. They can go past the combine. They can be invited to the combine and come back. And I don't know if I know the date. It's like May 21 or something like that, May 25, that they having to pull their name out. So they can stay in longer, get more feedback from the NBA scouts and NBA teams before they pull their names out, as long as they don't sign with an agent. So for our guys, not all of them should declare, like Calipari is saying for Kentucky. But our starting 5 that are underclassmen, obviously Bryce and Joel and Marcus are gone. They've graduated, used up their eligibility. But Justin and Kennedy, Isaiah, Joel Berry. They should all declare, go hear what they have to say. If they get invited to the combine, go, work out and see if they, what their stock is. And then I assume all of them would come back. Joel Berry, obviously being hurt, probably can't show much, but he can go hear what the teams have to say, what they think he needs to improve on, and come back and work on it through the offseason. So really all those guys should declare, and then I assume they would all come back. I don't think any of them are really ready or would even go high enough to go anyway. Obviously, we've been surprised. JP and James Michael McAdoo, when they declared with a year left of eligibility, it happens. Again, I'll hit on some of this stuff in the next one, but and we'll talk about if anything else is out about the investigation. They say notice of allegations is going to come out soon, or the revamped ones. So we'll talk about that in the next podcast a little bit, and talk about off-season stuff, talk about the schedule of the podcast through the off-season. If you don't know, we go to once a month in the off-season. Like I said, I'm going to try to do one more in April here, and then we'll go to once a month starting in May. But yeah, we'll hit on all that stuff later. We'll see what guys declare, or if any of them declare. If they announce they come back, we do have an announcement from Grayson Allen over at that other school that he is going to come back, and they're going to be really tough. But again, we'll take a look at all their classes, the incoming guys, talk a little bit more about that in the next one. But I feel like I'm repeating myself now, so I gotta get off here. Gotta go mourn some more for our Tar Heels, and like I said, I gotta rewatch that game and see what was going on, especially that last play. But don't blame the refs. Keep your head up high. We got to be proud of these guys. We got to support the guys through this tough time. As enjoyable it was for the whole season to watch this team, especially the end of the season, beating Duke, winning the ACC tournament, and then obviously this run to the championship. Remember that. Remember the journey, and always support the Heels. But I don't want to take any more of your time. I don't want to ramble on anymore. I hope you have enjoyed this enough to subscribe, to leave a review wherever you listen to it so that other people will find it, and also share it with your friends and family. It would mean so much to me and help the podcast out so much. Connect with me if you haven't already. All those social links will be down in the description. Send an email with thoughts. If you'd like to come on the podcast and give your 2 cents, I'd welcome that. But just make sure you connect with me, and always remember, especially now, go Heels.